Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 160 of This Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing. Gosh, it just feels like last week it was 159. It's amazing. We're in our fourth year of bringing you each week the tools, news, and techniques that hospitality digital marketing can provide and offer. With that, actually, I'm expecting my co-host to arrive any moment soonly. I'm looking at Robert Cole, one of our co-hosts, does a great job of bringing together a lot of great topics that we share with the HSMAI's Digital Marketing Board. We used to be the Digital Marketing Council. Actually, no, it's called the Marketing Board now, not even the Digital Board. Sorry, I digress. Anyway, he puts together a great list of topics and news and so forth associated with what we need to know about during this week. News that affects us, actually affects our business, tools that we can use, and techniques that are being used in the industry. For those who may not be aware of it, which would be nobody, this is budget season. Literally, we have a season for it. Why no other industry has a season associated with budgeting, but it seems that hospitality does. We take a total of about 3 months to go through the process. It's kind of like the 6 steps to acceptance. We go through the no, it can't be true. Yes, we have to do it. Man, I'm mad about this. This is crazy. And then finally acceptance and all that kind of good stuff. But anyway, right about now, for people doing budgets, they should probably be in the phase of defending what they built in August. Since it's going to be rolling into September after Labor Day, we begin to formulate what it is that we're presenting to ownership and to upper management as to what we think as properties we should be spending for the course of 2019. Of course, there's a lot of questions associated with what 2019 is going to bring. I mean, we've had this unprecedented length, a good run, where we've had nothing but perpetual growth. But then again, as Robert has pointed out many times before, there are cracks in the armor. There is a plateauing of RevPAR. There is a plateauing of ADR, actually a digression of ADR. As inventory comes into the pipeline, which was slow to get in the pipeline, which was one of the things that probably has sustained our growth, is that usually pipeline development is quick to respond and slow to abate when it comes time to no longer needing it. It was a very slow start to additional inventory, which gave the inventory to markets the opportunity to yield ADR and rate more effectively over a longer period of time, while it was decided whether there should be new inventory into some markets. Well, that has changed, obviously. I can say in particular certain markets that I have clients with, that now with new inventory, there's a readjustment as to rate strategy associated with them, because now that there is to any market new inventory, then you cannot stretch your ADR, average daily rate, as much as you could before, because you were no longer as much in control or as much influence into the market or much of a percentage voice to your own market, because there is more inventory to compare yourself to and to fight for. And so for that reason, there's an adjustment to your budgeting process as to what yieldabilities you have for revenue. Now, I've had a great opportunity to speak several times on many different organizations as to the usability of revenue management and marketing and the combination between the two. And having revenue management use the data that marketing has to better understand how they can improve their view of the horizon. Now, when I say that, I mean that in the sense of what rates and revenues can be generated from what revenue management does, in the sense of collaborating on yieldabilities of inventory, rate availability of that inventory, and the typical revenue management stuff. Now, we as an industry still have this weird sense that marketing and revenue management are separate, although it is a growing interest that they are actually symbiotic and should be one and the same. Now, who leads that conversation is usually into question, but usually revenue management is the leading conversation, because they're the ones that have to translate revenue goals into the practicality of inventory availability and rate associated with inventory. Marketing is and should be the usability tool of that, which is the functionality and implementation of that strategy. How is it that we get into the market space? Who is it that we're marketing to, so that we can actually get and command the prices that we're asking for, along with the inventory that we are giving them to have. Now, there's lots of data points that go along with that. There is the data of intent from marketing as to when they begin to see who is looking for what and when. There is the data associated with the traffic that they can garner from those people that are coming to market and looking for market. That all need to be used by. I speak badly about you, but then you show up, so I can't talk bad about you anymore.
That's what I do. I always test to see if you're going to speak ill of me, and if you don't, then I show up. So.
Well, I was kind of saying some complimentary things about how you made a great list of points this week.
You're going to say something complimentary, but just nothing came to mind. So you're when you're on the air, it's hard to talk and think at the same time.
I was going to say, and then it was like, no. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Robert.
Not really. Very nice to be here.
And thank you for the list. I was going through some of the topics that you had there that I didn't realize.
Wow, I always like when you at least look at the subjects of them, not really read them, but they do come. They're late. They are late breaking news.
Yeah, I was fascinated with the Google tool. I didn't really realize that they had come up with that. Again, Google pops up with stuff, and you can be thinking that you're the most knowledgeable, up-to-date person, and by golly, there's always something to go, well, I didn't know that before. It's constantly evolving with stuff like that. So, yes, I was looking at the Google Thanksgiving flight tool, or holiday tool, I should say.
Oh, yes. Yeah, well, and the thing is that they're doing it for hotels, too. The article kind of started off talking about air, but they're doing it for hotels, and there's a little bit of subtlety in how they're doing it, what markets they're covering, and things like that. So yeah, we can certainly cover that off.
Did you have a favorite topic that you threw into that pile by any chance? Because I was elaborating again on the budget season conversation that we've been having.
Lauren, it's like children. All of these news topics, right? You don't want to pick one over the.
And I will reiterate what most of your friends say is, yeah, you do. You have a favorite.
oh, yes. Well, and of course, parenting tip that I always use is if one child goes, you like the other one better, agree with them. Yes. I mean, if that's that normally puts that really quiets things down. Or my favorite example, my favorite parenting tip was when we lived in Houston. My daughter was in 9th grade, and one of her friends, I think it was a year older or something, got her driver's permit, right? And so it was like, oh, this is a big deal. And not only did she get a driver's permit, but she got a BMW convertible because she got her driver's permit. That was, Dad was an EVP of an oil company's thing. So, but I was like, wow, well, so and so got a car, and I said that's because her parents love her more than we do.
You're a cruel man, Mr. Scrooge.
But how do you come back with that? I mean, Tim, have you have daughters? Have you tried parenting tips like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. We always used to tell them when they were. We always used to tell them when they were small. If like somebody pulls up in a dark van and says they need help, finding like their lost dog, or they've got candy or stuff. We were like, dude, free candy.
Right? Yeah.
Plus, the guy probably really loves his puppy. You should definitely look after that.
Exactly. And it's nothing that decades of deep discussions, maybe with a clinical psychologist.
I was going to say, our kid's therapist has said it had no effect on them whatsoever.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have the greatest example of parenting in the world, Robert and Tim.
How to scar your daughters in 3 easy lessons.
I kid.
Yes.
Mr. Tim, thank you for joining us. How have you been?
I have been well. I wanted to make sure I was here today. Unfortunately, I can only stay for a little while. And I won't be here next week, but I wanted to make sure I didn't miss like multiple weeks in a row.
Very kind of you.
So I'd rather be here for a little bit, but not at all.
Yeah. I guess Robert, what he's saying is that we suck as independent consultants because we have the time to be on the show, and Tim is by far more profitable and busier and doesn't have the time for us. But that, you know what? The token gesture is well appreciated.
It's a burden, but somebody's got to do it,
And I tell everyone, Tim, does all of his work pro bono, and it's great. So it's really,
I would like to point out, Lauren, I much prefer your interpretation than I've got a pile of stuff that I really want to finish so I can enjoy a 3-day weekend, right? Yes. As opposed to working for 3 days when everybody else is off. So. But sure, your version is really good. I like that one better.
Yeah, it's really good. And And I would like to thank Julie Jones of HSMAI for giving the Marketing Advisory Board homework due the day before a long weekend. So,
Nice. Yeah.
Wow.
For sure.
thanks, Julie.
Yeah.
I think actually I'll see Julie next week. The curate. I'm in Baltimore
Yeah.
next week.
I'll be there.
Hey, awesome!
You
All right,
will.
first beer's on me. Mr.
Boy,
Robert,
this
will
may
you
be
joining
something.
us?
I wasn't invited, so I guess not. So
see,
only
only
the heavy hitters.
I probably got in the back doors like, listen, we need somebody to clean the tables, bust the tables when we do sessions.
Hey,
You
I
wanna
used to
come
do
on?
that. I
And
used
I'm
to do that
parking
professionally.
cars, so
I know. Okay, quick question, Tim. Are you staying at the host hotel or are you
I
staying
am
elsewhere?
staying at the host hotel. I have a crazy week next week. I have, I think you guys know this isn't something we talk about on the show, and this is not meant as shameless self-promotion, but certainly feel free to use it as such if you like. I have a couple of partners that I work with on a software platform called Solo Segment, which you can learn more about at solosegment.com. It is not explicit to the hotel industry, but it's a tool that looks at your website search and how to improve content and things along those lines. And it's an AI-based program and the like. And it's some good stuff. And we have a management meeting not a management meeting. We have a big team meeting with our development team and folks like that every 2 months. Excuse me. Typically in Silver Spring, Maryland. And as it happens, Thursday night, Friday, Saturday is our every 2 month meeting. So I will be in DC. I'll be in Baltimore for Curate, and then head over to Silver Spring Thursday following Curate to be with the team for Solo Segment for a few days.
I'm sorry I dropped. I'm sorry I dropped off on podcasts. I normally fast forward through the commercials. I'm sorry. What was it?
Robert came with a sense of humor today, folks.
Well played, Robert. Well played. I do want to point out. And I legitimately mean this not as a commercial for Solo Segment. It is currently all the main product really only is designed for website search. Like content search, which most hotel companies don't actually have. Right, the search on most hotel websites tends to be rates and availability and things.
Right.
And our AI-based product. At the moment really depends on large volumes of data, which typically my clients, when I work with independent hotels, don't have, right? Or don't have access to in the way that makes the AI actually work yet.
Right.
So,
right.
I would be lying if I said that there weren't, ambitions and goals and things like that to be able to turn it into a product that can move into smaller businesses and the like. But for right now, our primary clients tend to be, Fortune 100 types, simply because they just have larger data sets.
Yeah,
sure.
Right.
Sure.
I mean, that's
Sure.
just a.
And you're a smart man because you can't run the music circuit like you do on concerts, and you're realizing that you're laying down monetary tracks of recurring revenue by creating software that will go over and self-propagate and create boatloads of cash for you without having to work hard and stuff, and that's brilliant.
Well, yeah, it certainly makes the days go by quickly some days, that's for sure.
And I'm still a proponent for hotel. You guys can tell me I'm wrong and this is stupid, if you care to. But I'm still a proponent for universal, kind of a universal search bar for hotels on their website. So, a lot of them just have a little hamburger type thing or something like that. Or, you have a little search functionality where you can say, I'm looking for whatever. That can help, especially if it's a complex resort sort of thing. Lots of stuff going on.
I will say that I agree with the huge caveat that, my feelings on that specific point, Robert, are tough to articulate in 280 characters or less, right? Like this is this could be an episode, not just a pithy comment, because there's a lot of.
Well, the bottom line: how do you make your content on your website easily accessible,
right,
so they can go right there instead of having to go down some sort of navigation path that was decided by either your web developer with no input from the hotel or
no input from reality.
of reality or any sort of user experience
Right.
testing or anything like that. So, if they want to figure out weddings, banquets, catering, whatever, restaurant, something like that.
Well, and I would also argue,
not
only would argue, do argue. Actually, this was the subject of my last Hotel News Hotel News Now column, which I've subsequently posted on my site and on LinkedIn. Is most hotels, now I won't say hotel companies, but most hotels themselves are so thin in content that I agree that what you're describing would be great if they had the content that then made that useful.
Yes.
Right? But assuming they had the
definitely put that
content,
caveat.
then yes, I generally agree with you, right?
Well, and one of our articles today was simplicity SEO play key roles in good website design from Hotel News Now, which cites probably one of your underlings at Tim Peter and one of your associates at Tim Peter and Associates, I believe, is quoted. So,
I remember that.
New tool just in case for all the geekheads that are out there that I've absolutely fallen in love with right now. It's a weird name. It's called OWOX, OWOX. But what it does, and this is to me the most valuable thing that it does, it draws in to your Google Analytics by creating a data set. It's pretty simple to do for those that geek into this. It pulls in your data set from Facebook, from Bing, from Twitter, from all these different platforms into your Google Analytics, into your funnel. So you can create goal sets associated with the contribution stream coming from them. It is, in my mind, not mind-blowing, but just like crazy good now that you're not looking at one screen, another screen, one screen, another screen. Implication, value proposition, you start doing separate math. It all puts it into Google Analytics. You can put it into BigQuery if you mess with BigQuery. But what's really cool about it is it draws it all together, and so you can see your funnel in my mind, the purest form yet. When you're using Google Analytics about where everything's coming from and why and where the cost attributions and everything else are going to.
Well, that's a great point because it speaks to what we were talking about a moment ago in terms of, is your content having any effect? Is your content, doing anything for you? One of the challenges, one of the reasons I think a lot of hotels.
Hang on, Lauren. I think we have an echo.
Yeah, we got a runaway echo, Lauren.
Hold on. All right. Does that help?
We'll find out.
That is much better.
That's much better. So,
I did like the underwater echo effect, though.
Exactly.
It's kind of a Jacques Cousteau feel, yes.
Exactly. When, one of the mistakes that I think hotels are making right now, and I'll just put it out there since we're in budget season, is that we've become so conditioned to becoming coin-operated businesses, right? I put $1 in over here, I get $1.25 out over there, or I get $2 out over there, I get $5 out over there, which is correct. We should be doing that generally. However, we've become so focused on that I think many hotels have lost sight of how do you build your brand over the long run? How do you grow your business over the long run? How do you get from customers over the long run in a way that you don't see the immediate return, right? But that the return legitimately exists. And that's where content tends to fall into this is, well, I'm going to spend money on this content, but is it going to produce, that 2-to-1 return, that 4-to-1 return, that 5-to-1 return? And if you can't see it, you don't invest in it. And that's probably a mistake, right? So if people can use this tool that you were mentioning or things like that to see, wow, we put this content out there, it actually does feed back to us in a better way. That's a huge plus. So excuse me, I can see a lot of value there. Pardon me.
Yep.
And Lauren, we do have a new little background echo coming back.
All right, I'm going to go kill my camera real quick. I'm going to go get my earbuds and plug them in and see if because I'm playing the audio off of what? Holly's joining. Holly is joining us.
Wow.
What?
Why would she be doing that?
Holly's over.
She's trying to save the show. She knows we're going in the wrong direction. She's got to join the show.
Not at all. I've enjoyed it very much.
A mission of mercy. Thank you. Thank you.
By the way, I've decided, Holly, we're going to...
Oh, she's gone.
Use the My Sharona music as your theme song from now on. It's Holly's alive. Anyway,
So apparently,
I'm gonna go get my earbuds. Give me just a moment. Sorry, John.
okay, cool.
So apparently, none of you watch Sharp Objects on HBO.
No, but that picture was awesome.
I mean, right? If
Totally.
anybody out in our viewer land watches Sharp Objects, it's actually, I'm having a tough time liking you, Robert. This character looks just like Robert Cole, and he is not a pleasant character.
Sounds
Well, wait a
pretty
second.
accurate to me.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds back like the Robert we know and tolerate.
Oh, I don't think so. No. You have to watch it to believe
What
it.
behaviors, what specific behaviors are different from him that you would say would be different from me? What's he do that I don't do, that you don't think I do?
Wait. I want to be fair to Holly. Are we getting into spoiler territory?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't. You have to see it. Also, it's very subtle. I don't know what your life is like with your
rat
wife.
bastard? Were you about to say
No.
rat bastard?
No, it's actually worse. He needs to grow a pair. I mean, he is like a doormat, and it's tough to. And so, like, now I'm totally putting that on you. I'm like, step up, Robert. It has nothing to do with you.
You haven't seen me interact with my wife before.
I would say he's totally henpecked. Oh my gosh, maybe you are him.
I might. Well, I don't know. It's my wife's birthday is September 1st, and we have started her weekend birthday extravaganza on Wednesday. So we have events Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It may continue through the next Wednesday. We aren't sure, but good chance it's going to go through run through Tuesday.
Yeah, but that's good. Actually, that's life in the hospitality industry, right? Birthdays are too much fun to stick them on just one day. Let's let them go for as long as we can.
Let them bleed over. Let's make it a whole month, actually. Let's just make it a whole month.
Don't give her any ideas, please.
We have to stop down this path because you are playing right into that character. And really, let's move on back to hospitality.
35 years of marriage, you get worn down.
Okay, stop.
To get back to I got to tell you a current thing that just happened to me. So I'm working with some clients on persona marketing, where we define personas. Thanks to Holly, you brought it to the front of my conversations because it was a part of her influencer program, which is a brilliant program. I mean, honestly, Holly, I can't give you enough credit for it. It was a really excellent program. And so I was working with personas and building personas for the client. And we built 4 personas for the fall season based on historical demographics and blah, 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 blah. So we thought we'd turn over the stone of YouTube advertising. Okay, we're going to go into YouTube. We're going to do some video advertising. So I didn't really have a lot of material to work with this particular property. So I had to combine still shots with some videos. But I was looking for the Metro single male-female / 25 to 35, actually 27 to 34 is the dem profile, traveling to New York that wanted to stay in a Nexus location, not big box, not man bun with Birkenstock shoes, the thing. I mean, I know it sounds very particular, but it actually is very segmented, okay? And so I made this video, and I loved it. I mean, I spent hours, and this was a no charge to them. This was like, I'm making this because I want to, first, get better at making video ads. 2, I really want to target this audience. And here's the video. This is so awesome. And they come back and say, if I show this to ownership, we're going to fire you. What? I mean, they're like, if we show this to them, they would think you're off your rocker. What? Who is it? We don't want these people in our hotel. What are you doing? And I'm like, no, this is just a segment. And then I had to go through this long explanation of why this is just a piece to a puzzle. It's a piece to a mosaic. It's not, we're not chasing this. They want a certain demographic in their hotel. And it's like, yes, I understand. That's the core. Okay. But this is a tangent right now of people traveling post-school start through New York prior to holiday. Right. There's this niche. Okay. And I'm all like, we got to chase these people. I'm like, okay, we'll just put it on the shelf then. We're not going to show it to ownership.
Yeah.
I'll send it over to you because you know what it is. It's just, it goes back to, you think you educate your team, your clients as to what it is that you're doing, that they seem to nod their head like a bobble dog. Like, yes, I understand that, until it comes to what I call the porte cochere effect. you know, owners love to see their hotel building. Nobody else cares about how the building looks in the picture, but the owners always want to see a picture, right? Well, for them, they have in their mind who they want to walk through the door. And that's a perennial 12 months, 365 thing. And it's like, you're not selling to yourself, or worse yet, you're not selling to that singular image. You're selling to a variety of images. Different people walk through your door at different times for different reasons. And that's where that marketing came from. But anyway, good.
So you guys are all consultants. You have to run into this all the time. How do you deal with it?
All the time.
Like if they hire you, but they know better.
Well, what I do is I try to start off with, in the first meeting, I do two things. One is to try to really make sure that I understand their objectives, their business objectives as an organization, right? To make sure that's very, very clear. And we kind of go, okay, these are the ground rules. These are your business objectives. Good. So we won't stray from those. And then the second is to figure out what the finish line looks like, and goes, okay, so if this is going to be successful, what have we done? What's the end product and result look? Which again clears up all sorts of things on deliverables and things like that. And it doesn't have to be a massively difficult discussion, but you know, it can just really refine things. And then you go, okay, good. So we know what we're starting with in terms of the not necessarily the strategies, but the objectives, right? The strategies plan that's going to get developed. And here's what, you know, basically I'll ask them, what the product at the end, you will be happy if it does what, right? What's the output look like? And if you can kind of pin those down, that's good, but you will still have clients. I had a large, I was very excited about this project. Major ski area wanted their loyalty program redone. We checked all of the boxes. Everything was nailed down. All the departmental leaders who were normally, I was warned, these guys are going to hate it, right? They don't like everybody loved it. And basically the CFO went, no. And it wasn't because it was too expensive or anything like that. It checked all the boxes, did not want to do it.
That's what this video was.
At that point, you just say, that's fine. You don't have to do it. But, you know, and it's like, boy, I think you just wasted a bunch of money, which I don't like. And I don't like working with clients who continue to do it. And I didn't aggressively solicit, hey, let's do phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. It's just like, okay, that's okay. You know, I don't want to do that.
Well, and in your mind, you did everything right, but it didn't. It was still wrong. I mean, the whole premise and everything.
Yeah. I agree with everything both Lauren and Robert have said. The other thing is, you know, we certainly come at this, and I suspect this is true for Robert, and I suspect this is true from Lauren as well. You know, we come at a lot of this for these things that are going to be the more radical ideas. We just want to test. Like, we're going to run a $100 campaign. We're going to run a $500 campaign. I mean, a lot of this depends on the scale of the property, right? If some folks a small campaign is $100, some folks a small campaign is $10,000, right? But we're going to say we're going to do a small test and see if this works. And usually that gets you over the finish line. And then when it doesn't, you do what Robert said, which is you go, all right, man, we'll find it someplace else. You know, we understand why you're opposed to this for whatever reason. You're paying us good money to give you what we think is the right answer. You're the one who has to live with the outcome of that decision. You say no. You say no. I will tell you, this is a weird statement. This probably says way too much about me. But when I worked in industry, when I worked for a hotel company, and I would have these debates with my, the CEO of the company or my boss or whatever, that would drive me nuts when I felt like I knew what the right answer was, and you could not get people to do it for whatever the reason was.
Right.
Now these days, this is a fixed engagement, and if you say no, you say no. What am I going to do? I'll move on to the next one. And you just talk it up to experience
in this process,
see if there's something you can do differently the next time to lay the groundwork better. But sometimes, even if you do everything right, they just can, an individual can say, not for me. I hear everything you're saying, not for me. Okay.
And usually it's the CFO.
Now, in my case,
not necessarily.
No, in my case, and it was the CEO who was listening completely to the CFO, right? Everybody was kind of bought in, and the CFO kind of, pulled the trigger. Now, the interesting thing was, one of the things was to go redo their payment processor, right? Because that was going to be the core of all the data, right? To get for their loyalty program to really tie. They did make that change because that was the area. And, and I try to look at this and understand why they're doing it because, these people generally aren't idiots. Right. Sort of thing, they're making it. You try to figure out why did they make the decision that way. That the person was comfortable in the financial world, and once you got anything outside of that, he found his comfort level was just saying no to it, right? Because it's like it sounds good, that's great, but either through fear or and this wasn't even necessarily. It's a conservatism because it wasn't a radical sort of thing, and this organization had insanely bad data. I mean, we're talking 20% of their 25% of their revenues weren't even properly accounted for what things were coming from and getting sourced back to households and things like. It was really, really, really bad. And again, the CFO would make comments like their summer guest was a completely different person than their winter guest. There was no overlap. And you look at it and go, no, that's not
true.
Right. That is basically, yes, I can say overall, yes, you have skiers versus mountain bikers and things like that. But again, you have people with sets of beliefs who have power and comfort levels, and they will make decisions based on what
it is a comfort level decision. This was
going to do. Yeah.
This was based on the fact that
one thing. This is an ancient consulting truism, right? Peter Drucker famously said, back in the 50s or 60s, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Right.
And so sometimes you can come up with the best strategy in the world, but if the culture is not ready to accept that, I worked with a company, I worked with a resort, a fairly good-sized resort company for a couple of years. And we were coming up on a renewal, and to be very candid, I didn't push for the renewal, and they didn't, because in 2 years they executed on 10% of the things I was providing to them, because culturally they just weren't there, And what I didn't want it to be was a case where they started saying things about, well, we're paying this guy all this money and we're not getting any value out of it. Right. Yeah. I wanted to walk away clean. And that's basically what happened because, they weren't getting the value. I wasn't able to help them in the way that I thought I was able to because they just had too much culture change that they had to go through.
Yeah. And that's what
any one person within the organization. Culture is built off. I mean, you guys know this, but culture is built on the stories we tell ourselves. Right. There's these things we know to be true. So this resort had been, a lot of the people who'd been in there had been there for 10 years, and they'd been telling themselves stories about who they were as a company and who their guest was and where their business came from and, what they were going to be when they grew up kind of thing for a decade or more, right? And I'm trying to tell them something that flew in the face of that, not entirely, but enough that it was just too far outside their comfort zone.
Sure.
What are you going to do?
Sure. And then that's pretty much
did the best job I could. Did the best job I could to make the case for why this was the right thing to do. Ultimately, it just wasn't a fit. They weren't ready for the conversation.
And Donald, to your point, it's that there's enough of these instances. Then you look at your client relationship and say, you know what, we're not fitting, because even though because like in this instance, I even mathed it out. I showed the actual. Can you guys costed out the targeting and everything else. Yeah, you're sorry. We can hear you. Wow, you all right?
We can see you. Yeah. We can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he can hear us.
I can hear you. I can't see or hear Lauren.
That's very selective, Tim. I can see everybody.
You did a video mute on poor Lauren?
What? I finished what I thought was this, very compelling story, and then there was radio silence for the longest time. I was like, either this is the most brilliant comment I've ever made, or it's the most idiotic comment I've ever made. No reaction at all.
We were just taking it in. We were just wow.
Yes, we were absorbing. I want to make everybody an administrator, and if that's the case, Tim,
I'm going to drop off and come back on and see if I can reboot Lauren. Good. I'll be right back.
Don't do that.
But I was going to say that I even mapped this out with the content with this project. Was we talked about how much we would be spending. We targeted out the filtering and how much we potentially could make off of it based on basic conversions. And so we had all the math. Everything was like Tim was pointing out, boxes were checked. It's just they didn't like it. They didn't like the feel of it. They didn't like the look of it. They understood the concept, didn't appreciate the concept, didn't want to do it. And it was a culture thing. It was just, we don't see ourselves in that perspective anymore. Tim, can you hear us? Or can you hear me anymore?
Yeah.
Well, I'd say the way I try to prevent, I learned this a long time, actually back with, working within hotel companies. If you can nail down the objectives and kind of hear all the things, it's like requirements, right? Yeah. When you're doing product development, these are the requirements. It has to do the following things. Then basically, I mean, in product development, they go, oh no, it doesn't do it. And you go, well, wait, what is it? Is that a different requirement? In which case, I'm a big fan of change orders, because then there's a whole penalty phase to go, oh, you didn't identify that at the beginning. Now it's going to cost you more because you wasted people's time. And if you institute that, there's a little bit, and you can do that more easily within a construct of an organization, as opposed to an external consultant. Change orders and pain because they messed up is sometimes hard to do. But again, if you can go through the check boxes and it's like, well, wait, it does all of these things. What's the other thing that's missing? And it's like, if it's a campaign or an ad, you don't like the creative, you don't like the direction, you don't like the messaging. What if the messaging does the things you wanted? It's just the execution. What is it that is making you say no, right? And it may be they think it's too big or too different from what they did before, which may be a valid complaint, but it might be, hey, that's why you wanted to do something different.
And I mean, one of the things you have to watch for is we are all data driven, right? We're all very data driven. Exactly. One of the things that is tough to get your arms around are the implicit data, right? The things that everybody knows. And one of the things that comes up in consulting engagements a lot is, does everybody know it because it's BS, or does everybody know it because the data is kind of buried in ways that, they're right, they're smart, they work there all day, every day, but it's just not easy to get your hands on. And so it's data you miss in the discovery process and things along those lines. And trying to puzzle out which of those that is sometimes where the biggest part of the work is, because, I want to be very clear. I said this a couple weeks ago on the show when I was talking to Lauren, and Robert said it earlier today. Most of the folks who hire us are smart, right? They are not morons. They're good at what they do. They run quality businesses, things along those lines. And if everybody in the company knows something to be true, often it's because there is something that actually suggests that's true, but there isn't. Finding the thing that proves that is hard, right? So that's what you have to puzzle out is that the case where the data's there, but just so under the surface, or so, I hate this word, but so intangible. And I have a reason why I think it's a bad word, but is so intangible for the time that it is still meaningful, or is it a myth that they've created, right? And that's something you often have to pull apart. And more often than not, it's the former, not the latter. Occasionally, it's the latter. The story I gave a moment ago about the resort, in 7.5 years of consulting, I've run into that twice, right? I really do think it was, culture and just stories they like to tell themselves, and they just weren't ready for change yet, right? Right.
Or, and on the other side of it, sometimes you get aspirational sort of thing. They want to be something. Again, it may not be data driven. It's like, we are this great thing, right? And we deserve this, or we should be able to get an ADR that's $50 higher, or who knows, right? We should be able to fill our suites with you can get just any number of sorts of things, and it happens for good reasons. I mean, they're good people who believe in their product. Yeah. They love it. They're breathing it 24/7, and they love this thing and they want it to be successful, and they aren't necessarily looking with clear eyes of what's going on with the competition or pricing, or certain markets just not exist. I mean, leading or top hotel chain. I don't want to say leading hotels because people say, what's Ted doing? But a lot of leading hotel groups, right? Top hotel groups. you know, they're like, hey, our transient traveler is it, and we do all this, and you start digging through their numbers, you go, nah, it's about 4% of your business. You got a lot of corporate, you got group in here, you've got a bunch of wholesale, you got all sorts of cats and dogs compared to what you're kind of, you know, picturing your image of. And maybe that is the image that's being presented by the hotel, that you're super deluxe and really cool and celebrities and stars and God knows what are coming in there. But hey, you know, that may not be filling you, you know, 200 days a year.
Right. Well, and I'll tell you a funny story. I mean, this is a great case. What Robert's describing is a great case where data plays a role. So, I mean, for folks who are watching the show, they might find this useful. You know, one of the things that I do all the time, and I'll just give this away for free because this is hardly rocket surgery, is there's free data out there that we often don't look at. You know, one of the first questions that I ask the hotels that I work with, and I'm sure Robert asks a similar question, I'm sure Lauren asks a similar question. It's not the first, but one of the first questions is, who are your competitors? Yeah. And one of the things that I try to show folks is find the things that bring you traffic from search, from organic search, from paid search, right? Mm-hmm. And then search for those terms and see who comes up, because that's actually your competition, right? Whether that's, you know, whether you think it is or not, when guests are saying, I want to solve for this kind of problem, and your hotel is showing up and other hotels are showing up, they are your competition. They are in the consideration set, right? And so, you know, that's a place where you can use data to sort of reframe people's expectations of, we think we're X and Google and the customer thinks you're Y. Okay, do we need to do something to get to X, or do we need to acknowledge that, yeah, we're Y and we have to compete in that space more effectively? Right. Well, so it's things like that, you know, that can be really helpful to use data to reframe the problem. And usually most folks, you know, historically, their eyes are opened by that, you know, because they're like, yeah, but we compete with, and it can work in both directions. You know, they think they're better than what their competition is, or they think, oh, we could never compete with those guys because they're so much better. And it's like, you show up on the same page. You sure do compete. Right? Let's go, and go get them.
Yep. And to extend that a little bit farther is that when I ask questions, and two things I always do with clients, especially if they have multi-units, is I ask to speak to the properties directly, do an interview process with them. Right. And one of the questions I ask with them is, you know, who you're competing with, to your point, competitors and so forth. I said, and then I asked the question, outside of the people you're competing with in market, who are you competing with? And a lot of times they don't have an answer. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, I mean, example of, I used to have hotels in Key West and I was competing with Aspen all the time. And they're like, what? It's like, well, because we're looking for the same demographics. And they never looked at it that way. And to your point, Tim, you know, go online and see what is pushing against you for what you're looking to do. Because there's families out there, in my case, where I was talking about Key West and Aspen, do I go to a beach with the family or do I go skiing with the family?
And that's, you know, that is a very difficult, that's an excellent example. That's a very
awesome example
one to come up with on pure Google search, because it is how travelers behave. And there are, I mean, for Aspen, a lot of their guests and a lot of the major destination, you know, ski resorts, they go to a beach resort one year and a ski destination the next year, and that is just what they do. And they may, and you have some who will go to a different ski destination every other year, and so you're only going to get that.
Don't need to go there again this year.
Right. I mean, that's a different sort of, and that stuff is really, really hard to figure out without good data.
And for the boys and girls listening today, if you want to know a technique and strategy to do this, name something in your part of your product that is associated with your competitor. Like I made the Aspen room for one of our Key West hotels. So I had legitimate content for Aspen. So it allowed me to organically show up in the Aspen.
You are so evil.
There's nothing evil about that at all. That is brilliant. No. That is absolutely brilliant.
That is.
You know, so that way you can be in the space legitimately without having to fight and compete pay-wise, because then of course your pricing rank went down because you have legitimately content associated with Aspen.
Although Lauren's New York clients who have the Marriott room, the Hilton room, the Doubletree room, the Continental room.
I don't know what you're talking about, Robert. I just asked him to change some of the meeting space names. I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
But one of the other things that I have to say this, and this is from just the consulting angle of this, I love what I do because to me, and I think Robin and would echo all this, is that, and Tim as well, is that when you go into a client and it's like shooting fish in a barrel, that's an easy client to work with. It's like, it's so obvious what they're doing wrong. The real challenge that I just love is when you walk into a room full of smart people and you're looking and you've done your pre-auditing and so forth, and they're doing lots of great stuff. And you're looking at it like, how can I impact these people? And that's when you get that's when I love it, because then it's like, then it's like, I got to be on the front edge. I got to be really good because they're paying me to be smarter than them, and they're already smart, and I'm not smarter than them. I just have to look at it differently, and that's like you walk away when you can find something like that. And you work with that. That is just exciting stuff. You walk away with an adrenaline rush because that's just so enjoyable when you walk around going, "Yeah, this was cool. I enjoyed this. This was fun." You know what I mean? Yeah, that's good times.
The two that always get me really jazzed, especially jazzed. That's definitely one where they're doing everything right, and you're trying to figure out where do you take it the next tier, a tier beyond. Right? It challenges you, it forces you. And the other ones I like, and I mean, I talk about folks in Charleston as an example. That's for years. They ran great hotels. They weren't marketers, right? So all we really had to do was shine a spotlight on all the great stuff they were doing.
Right.
Like, that was just fun because it's like, these are fantastic hotels that people deserve to know about. These folks are doing everything right. How do we help them get a better platform?
You've got a ton of great stories that aren't getting told.
Yeah. I mean, very true. I remember I was having a conversation with another set of properties one time, and they were telling a story about, they said, we have such a tough time getting people to understand who we are, and it's really hard because, these are historic properties, that are very distinct, and it's a family-run business, and, we don't know how to get people to really appreciate it. And I'm like, oh my God, you just said it all. This is amazing.
Have you ever tried telling somebody that?
Right. I was just like, yes. I mean, it was just so good. It's like people have to invent stuff like what you are, and you actually are that. Come on, let's just
really. I mean,
and we're gonna do fine.
And to that end, I got to go back to the YouTube conversation. It is such a fertile ground for opportunity in YouTube because it is a threshold that most properties don't. They look at it as an intimidation. It's like, I don't have content, I can't create video. And then, unfortunately, people in our industry are like, "Oh, you need a video? Let me ching ching ching. Charge you way more than it costs to actually make this stuff." And when I talk to my clients, it's like, look, I'll build it fast and free. Just I need the content. I mean, when I went to some of my clients, I always bring my little baby drone. People are like, I'm a favorite of TSA. Let's put it this way. A lot of people owe me lunch from TSA because they're like, Mr. Gray, is this your bag? Yes. We're going to have to do a cavity search. Snap. Because I have so much electronics in my bag between 360 camera, my drone camera. I mean, they're like, oh, you're a dream come true for TSA training because there's some stuff in your bag nobody's ever seen before. But everywhere I go, I'm taking pictures and videos to drive my wife crazy. She's like, why are you taking it? Because I need a picture of us driving in a car. Why? Because I need one if I need a video snip of driving to the hotel, whatever. There's all this crazy stuff that you do. I mean, I'm sure, Tim, you do with music. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I got that, and I want to write it down or something. And so I have all this video, but when you put the videos together, it's cheap in comparison to the yieldability of some other channels. It has a huge impact if you hit the mark and your client actually likes it instead of putting it on a shelf. But the usability of it is fun. I mean, one of my other clients in reverse, just to make it a balanced scale, love and eat up every video I make. I have made segmented videos that are just, to me, they're fun. At this point, it's just freaking fun. And it's not hard to make. Once you get into the routine of it, you understand what you're trying to do with it. I'm not professing to be a pro builder of these, a producer of these things. But when you're doing 6-second videos, 30-second videos, 15-second videos, it fills up fast, and they're huge impact drivers when it comes to it.
And I know I cited this Hotel News Now column already about that I wrote a couple weeks ago, but I'm bringing it back for a specific reason. I always look for signals of what the major players tell us are important, right? Mm-hmm. And what I think is interesting, and I linked to this in the column, which is why I'm referencing it. Google was running a pilot earlier this year, and they've since stopped it. But they would actually send a director to your business, right, to create video for you in exchange for you buying $300 worth of video ads on Google, on YouTube in a year. Right? Wow. Now, what I found fascinating about that was twofold. One, how cheap must it be to make the content if $300 worth of advertising is going to pay for Google to pay the people to actually do the content? And two, how important the content actually is, that Google is willing to fund the upfront cost. You know, that's an enormous indicator of how big this is, that Google is saying, we're going to pay for you to create the content, at least up front.
Yeah, that's interesting.
What maybe Google might be looking at something like customer lifetime value.
I don't know. Who could possibly say?
Who could figure that sort of thing out?
I can't imagine that Google knows anything about customer behavior in any way that would say this is something that any of us should care about.
Actually, that's a great. I'll just one thing real quick. That's a great example, though. Google being a data-driven company, right? So they know the behaviors, they know how much this costs, they know who they're targeting, and they go, good, here it is. And what do? They provide a bunch of data to go, hey, it worked. Do you want to do more of it? Or no, you're going to stop. It worked, obviously.
Well, I heard a story, I heard a story for years. I don't know that this is a true story. This may be apocryphal, but supposedly in the early days of the Yellow Pages, and
this
Robert,
may be what?
Apocryphal.
Apocryphal.
A made-up
Portent
story.
of Doom.
You know, not a lot of data points, but a story that has become true over time, but we don't actually know whether or not it's true. Right?
Apocryphal.
All right, apocryphal.
Plants have it. Plants have it too. Yeah.
That's chlorophyll. So the story that I have heard, and this is a little before my time, and for once it's before Robert's time too.
What?
I don't know.
Now we're back to Bethlehem. We're back to Bethlehem on this.
Supposedly, in the early days of the telephone company, in the early days of the Yellow Pages specifically, the phone company supposedly would go into businesses and they would give them a phone. They would simply give them a phone, and they would, leave the phone there for a month, right? And they'd give them, the minimal listing in the Yellow Pages and things along those lines. And they would basically come back at the end of the month and say, all right, we're going to take the phone out now.
No!
And the businesses all went, no. What would it cost me to keep paying you for the phone? Now, I don't know if that's a true story or not, but supposedly that's how phone adoption happened in businesses especially if you think businesses in the era where the phone started to become a thing. We're talking, the general store. We're talking your local pharmacist.
Right.
Local.
Well, because the phone company had put a bunch of posts out in the street or whatever and strung a bunch of wires.
You know what? That adds to my argument about the loyalty program I'm using with one of the clients, where they give the second best loyalty program to everybody that comes through via OTA. And in reverse to the normal loyalty programs out there, we give it to you up front, and the hopes is that you're going to want to keep it when we take it away at the end of the year if you didn't come enough times. Now, I got to give Holly some credit. She's going to love this one. It's like, okay, so we did the influencer program, and one part of the feature of what you have with is Adobe Spark. And in that interview process that I had with the client to their property levels, they were expressing frustration as to their ability to influence their own content. The website was too standardized. There was no methodology to changing it, so forth and so on. And so I brought up our conversation about Adobe Spark, that you can create a lateral amount of content for it. Oh my God! They thought that they had been given the keys to the kingdom. Right. I mean, they were just this revelation of what they could do and create. And then this is no exaggeration. I had the call on Monday with this one particular property. By Wednesday, they had launched a particular campaign unique to their group sales business for their particular property and booked their first piece of business on it, and nothing to do with their corporate relationship. Right. And they're sitting around, and I get a call from the person that brought me onto the team, and it first sounded like it was Chris. It's like, Lauren, one of the XYZ property, they went over and went off and created this campaign. They didn't tell me what they had done or how they had done it. I'm like, I was like, no. He says, dude, he's like, literally, dude, that alone justified any existence of you talking to them, because at that point it turned into this. Every other hotel was asking them in the same system, what did you do? How did you do it? What happened for it? And literally, you brought that back to my mindset with the Adobe Spark, because it was one of those tools. I use it from time. It's like Doodly, I use it from time to time. It's not in the front of my mind anymore. But for people in the space, these things are revolutionary to them. They don't understand.
By the way, so this is something I haven't written about yet, which I know is rare in my case, right? Because I always am like, let me show you this thing I wrote a couple of years ago. But I just had the craziest experience, and I can totally share this publicly to give you a sense of how much opportunity there is out there. I mentioned Solo Segment at the top of the show, the work I do with them. One of the guys who works for the company, one of my partners, went ahead and he wrote a blog post. He was doing some traveling, and he wrote a blog post about his travels and tied it back to what Solo Segment does, right, as a business. And he talked about he was fishing in a little town called Folkston, Georgia, right? And basically talked about what fishing in Folkston, Georgia is like and things along those lines. And basically created content for Folkston, Georgia, right? Sort of a tertiary market, not a real, top-of-mind place and things along those lines. Folkston, Georgia, and Folkston, GA, and other related terms are among the top search terms driving traffic to Solo Segment's website, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Oh.
Now, this is not, the company has nothing to do with the hospitality industry specifically, but because there's such a dearth of content, because there's so little content about some of these markets, if you were a hotel and did this, you would be bringing in, I'm not going to say tons of sales yet, but bear with me for a second. There's a couple dots I need to connect here, right? But you would be bringing in tons of traffic that you're not getting today. And here's why this is really important. I can't quote the numbers off the top of my head, but you've all seen the Calibri Labs data that says, 96% of people who start their journey on an OTA book on an OTA. Don't quote me on the exact number, but it's some very high percentage, right?
Yeah.
Well over 90%. I don't know if it's 96, 97, 95. Doesn't matter.
Right.
Most of the people, the overwhelming majority of the people who start on an OTA book on an OTA.
Right.
People who start on a hotel website book on the hotel website at a much lower value. It's like 30% or something like that. Again, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's dramatically lower.
Right.
But here's the key point, and this is something that's in that data that I think people miss. If we know that most of the people who start on the OTA book on the OTA, and we know that a lot fewer people who start on the hotel website book on the hotel website, we also know that it's true that most of the people who don't start on a hotel website don't ever book direct. Right? You will never get them to book direct if they don't come to you in the first place.
Right.
And that's an enormous opportunity to use content to draw people in. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to capture 90% of them, but if you captured 30% of them, that would be a huge step forward from where you are today. And we're too many hotels, since I was talking about mistakes hotels are making, get too focused on, and I know we've talked about this on the show many times. Ed beats this drum a lot. Lauren, you beat this drum a lot. Robert, you beat this drum a lot. But we get too focused on when they're there ready to buy, And let's face it, Booking.com and Expedia rock at that. Trying to go head-to-head with Booking.com and Expedia at that stage in the journey is a terrible idea. Start way earlier in the journey and get those people who haven't made up their mind where they're going to go yet, and get them to start with you, because the odds that they will book with you go up, I don't know, infinite %.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I actually, go ahead, Robert,
if they don't know about you, right?
Right.
How are you going to get them to? You have to get them to your site, right? They don't even know who you are. That's one challenge. The other one is they're totally brand agnostic, right? They could care less. They are looking for. I mean, and I'm surprised actually OTAs don't do this. Somebody really, I would think, should, and they've probably tested it. When I go through like a Booking.com. Traditionally, and again, you could break this down by persona, right? And they'll ask questions. This is business trip or personal trip or something like that. But I may say, I'm looking for a 4-star and higher hotel. I want it sorted in price order. I want an 8.0 and above, review rating, whatever. Give them to me. That's how I always search. And I have to click like 3 or 4 times to do it. And it's pretty quick, but it's just like, you know who I am. You know who I've signed in. You obviously know I do this because you track it. Why don't you just give that to me? Because now, again, that does undermine a lot of. It's probably because they can't advert those ad positions at the top. What about this? But again, if you know, hey, That's not
I
a
think I know
persona.
the
That
reason
is
for that, by the
an
way.
actual behavior. You go, wow, you should be able to do something to simplify my process and have signals to advertisers to here's a guy to go do something dynamically to try to get right there because he's serious.
I bet I know why they don't do that. This is a guess, by the way. I could be totally wrong. But, we talk about this lots of times. When we talk about personas and things along those lines, we also have to recognize that very few people fall into the same persona
Absolutely.
every trip they take. And often,
Right.
sometimes multiple personas in a single trip, right? But if I'm traveling with my, if I'm traveling with my wife, I'm one persona. If I'm traveling with my wife and kids, I'm a separate persona. If I'm traveling, for business, I might be a third persona entirely. And so, it could be that the vast majority of the folks who are using Booking.com, Expedia, and the like, they've discovered that the value of doing that actually doesn't show them what they need for this trip.
Right.
People are far too likely to change.
I would think for those platforms, they're starting to get enough data where they can start figuring that out. Because they're going that destination over that date period, over that lead time, whatever that may be. Boy, that's looking like such and such. And
which is why
go back to a little bit.
I could be wrong, right?
But
we'll go back to something. Going back to something that Holly introduced with her influencer conversation, where I was so honed in on persona development and so forth, is that tying personas to business cycle is more important than tying personas to perspective. When you're creating personas that you're using to communicate with your team members and you're creating personas to create for your marketing strategies, it's about the business cycle they're representing, not so much the individuality of whom they are as they change for the traveling. Because to your point, Tim, I'm traveling differently with my wife than I am individually, or whether it's business or trade or leisure, whatever it is. The persona that may be crafted around the intent of marketing to me is about the business influence I create for that particular property, where I'm traveling that time of year for an event, or I'm traveling that time of year for the demand to that market, or whatever it is, and you create the persona to that. Now, I have to add to the caveat, because we're all in these budget conversations with clients these days and so forth. I was asked, and I made friends of some, and people were looking at me like I lost my mind. They were talking about marketing spends and so forth. And I got dragged into a conversation which I knew was political between subject A and subject B. It's like, so Lauren, how much more money do you think we should spend on XYZ digital marketing campaign? And I said, no more, none, no more. You're paying enough already. And of course, one person's like, who was advocating the increase of budget, was like, what are you talking about? You're going to say, spend more money, throw more money at it. And of course, the other person on the other side of the room who was, squeeze every penny they can. I said, because you're not yielding your particular revenue right now enough with what you're spending. You don't need to throw more money at it. You need to, and how this goes back to something you threw into your influencer program. It's about improving the conversion values associated with the string. It says, let's just take this in context. And I said, about attribution strings. I've talked about attribution strings and so forth. This is, let's just follow the path of one of your event-driven paid programs. You're driving it to a page that has 10 different aspects to it, not the aspect that brought me there. If you improve the attribution string to drive content specific for what you put them there for, you're going to improve the ratio of return on it without having to spend more money.
That's right.
So at the end, I kind of made peacemaker for both of us. Like the person that wanted to spend more money understood that we should make first that the money we're spending yields better. And then the other person that didn't want to spend any money feels happy that the money that's being spent. And they actually started collaborating on more stuff afterwards, which I felt pretty cool about, because they understood it wasn't just about more money, less money. It was about how well and how efficient. And at that point, the conversation turned much more realistic for them, which was fun to see. Actually.
One of my clients that I did a bunch of work with for a long time, one of the first things we did was fire the agency, because the agency was telling them to spend more money. And when we looked at, it's worse than you know. This actually angers me even to this day to talk about. Well, because it's the same kind of thing I was talking about before, of the folks who you want to help because they're just really good hotel folks. They're really smart. They're great at running a great hotel, and they were being taken advantage of. The agency was either. So the agency was their paid search was driving people to basically everything was going to the home page essentially, right? It was always going to the wrong landing page, and the bounce rate from their paid search was north of 80%.
Oh, get out of here. Really?
Oh, I swear to God.
Oh, my God.
Which,
and I bet
at that
that
point, the
little
agency,
stat
there's-
wasn't getting reported to the client.
No,
I bet it wasn't in their report.
And the reason it angers me is because the agency, only one of two things could be true. I suppose they both could be true, but they were either criminal or they were morons. Like, you cannot run a paid search campaign that badly unless you're an idiot or you're simply stealing
or
from
you're
stealing.
taking the program off the shelf and just doing a search and replace on the name or a keyword.
I mean, come on. Like Google, if you Google's default recommendations, it will perform better than
Right.
that.
Oh no, I
Right.
know, but I've seen major agencies kind of do that, and who knows, they work with
That's true.
or convenience stores or auto parts, God
Yeah.
knows what, and they just have no, we do this and we do great things and we won these awards, and they go, oh, this is great. They met the GM or owners, whoever met the guy at a cocktail party, and you did that campaign. I love that campaign. That's so great.
Right.
The horses across the meadow was so fantastic.
Right. Exactly. Folks, by the way, I hate to do this. I know I showed up a couple minutes late, and I've got to leave a couple minutes earlier than I normally do today. But I
appreciate the time whenever you have it.
And he always lies to us about hating leaving. You know what he's going to do, he thinks is more important and more fun than this. So that's fine.
I disagree. I absolutely disagree with the latter. And I only disagree with the former in the sense that, I've got a client on the other side of it who's expecting something, and I'd rather not be working on, and I would be full disclosure. I'd rather not be working on it tomorrow, Sunday, and Monday. So
very true. Very true.
In this specific case, many weekends I would eat it, but this isn't one of them. So,
Mr. Tim, where if people want to know more about you and find out more about what you talk about in publications and so forth, where do they came?
Sure. TimPeter.com and TimPeter.com/blog and TimPeter.com/podcast for all your favorite stuff that I do. That's the easiest way to find it.
Which is a great podcast. I love it. I thoroughly enjoy
Nice
it. You give great insights to it.
I'm at Curate next week too, so I'll see you there.
Fantastic.
Wow.
So Robert, you're on the outside, dude.
Robert doesn't get to come.
Robert is, yeah.
No, we will think of you. We will think of you while we're there, Robert.
We'll have a toast.
Yeah,
we'll have a toast. Oh yeah, Robert's here, boy. He'd be drinking with us, but no, he's not. So tough.
I thought it might be a breakfast meeting where you'd be having toast in my honor. Okay, so that's
yeah. There you go. Tim, thank you as always.
Well,
appreciate the time.
Holiday weekend. I hope you all get some rest, and let's here's to
see you next week.
Here's to strong September, October, November, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
All right. And see two out of the three of you next week. And Robert, I'm sure I'll see you. I'm sure I will see you soon. I will not be here next week, but I'll see you in 2 weeks. All right.
All right.
That's
very
fine.
good.
Bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye now. Yeah.
I have an article that Robert sent over that I have a question about.
You do?
I do. Can you explain what Best Western's doing?
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of a big deal.
Best Western wants to not be a not-for-profit anymore because they've been an association since their inception. They want to be a for-profit corporation, just like the other big hotel companies.
So they've been membership based always. That's what's been unique about them. And now they're not going to be that way. They're proposing that they not be that way anymore.
Yes. And so I think, step one, just a theory. Step one is they go, hey, we're going to be for profit. And step B at some point logically will be, we want to go public. And there is going to be a very large monetization event for the folks involved in that. And I'm not sure. I haven't really looked deeply enough into the structure of this, but I think that will be very interesting to see if it is the management group who comprises the common stock, right? Is it owned by the management team? Is there a leveraged buyout for a third party? I don't know how they do all this stuff. Is it spread across the members having ownership and having them, participate in this event? I don't know, but I would think it would be a significant monetization event. So.
Right.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Oh yeah. It's it's very smart from an investment perspective. And yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if that materially changes how they behave. I think if they do it the right way, they can still, have kind of the governance somewhat the same way. But I don't know. If you go public, all of a sudden you have these shareholders calling the shots, right? And you want those shareholders to be out in the general public so you can get institutional investment and things like that. Because if you can get more demand for your shares from people like Fidelity or major groups, Vanguard and those guys, that's great. People know Best Westerns. Hey, this thing's performing. Look at the profitability. We want to buy it. That sends the share price up, right? So just having this little closed group where it's just the members have it in a for-profit and maybe do a little, almost like a little co-op profit share. Maybe they start off and do that, but I got to think, if they're going to go through that process, they're going to go all the way down the path to be publicly traded and access new forms of investment and equity injections that they don't really have access to right now, right? So, it's hard to go back to all the members and go, "Hey guys, we would really like we're looking for $50 million to go do something," right? And it's like, "Oh well, we don't have that," right? But you go out to the public, right? You can go do all sorts of stuff. So
well, and their timing is pretty good too, in the sense that they went through this massive redo. I mean, literally, the Best Western is probably one of the biggest transitions in our industry in recent memory because of complete change. I mean, from FF&E standards to branding standards to color palettes, logos, everything. Everything changed. Yeah, so it is
subsegmenting the brand, you name it.
Yeah. So now that they kind of got their house in order, so to speak, there seems to be a natural progression of conversation that, okay, now we're going to go over and put ourselves in a different position by getting the monetization associated with the success of it.
And they're already asset light, right? So they don't own and manage these, that sort of thing. So all they're doing, they are the brand and they are their distribution, and they've got a lot of rooms and a lot of properties, and you start going, wow, that's something, sort of thing. And I think whoever was talking to Dorothy and David, whatever, their folks kind of went, you have a huge opportunity to make a lot of money for whoever. Right. And I think the whoever is going to be the very, very interesting conversation there. If the hoteliers
I threw up a link
or what?
Yeah, I'll throw the other link that Holly to the article you just talking about. I threw one up that I was going to want to bring up to the conversation as well too, and that was the tourism board's focus now on personalization. It was a Skift article that you had thrown in there about how tourism websites are being redesigned to get way more personal. And I got to say, I feel really good because I've been doing this for years and when it is applicable. And I feel like, all right, it makes sense. And I'm glad that the tourism boards and the CVBs are looking at it this way. I know that if Stuart was here, Stuart from Fuel Travel, he would be talking about what they've been filtering for Myrtle for a long time. And basically it's the experience filtering rather than pushing people to the standard indexed homepage where you have to design navigation for people to discover what it is that brought them there or what they might be interested in. This is a step in the direction of saying we're going to classify our content according to what we think you'd be most interested in by choosing it. So they were basically talking about creating experience-driven content and creating navigation around it. So that I used to have it, and I got the inspiration from, remember the magazine in the planes that had 36 hours in a certain city? It was a great. That was my inspiration for what I did.
American Way. They'd find that was a great model. They would find a celebrity and then have them normally in their hometown or someplace they knew, and it was like 3 days away. And everybody's now knocked it off in all the airline publications.
Right, and I did the same thing where it was 36 hours in a certain city, but then what I thought was a great extra flavor to it was that it was then categorically broken down to foodies, soft adventure, cultural, historical, off the beaten track, and categories, and then they would show a kind of an itinerary associated with if you were wanting to be that kind of person, This is what we suggest you wake up and do. This is what you do next, and so forth. And of course, the Google stuff works the way when it comes to itinerary building, the same methodology. But tourism taking this into their website, I did the same thing with website for individual properties, where it's like, okay, you want to be cultural, you want to be foodie. Here's what we recommend. And I would take people that were in the hotel that had been there for numbers of years, the bellman that had been there for 8 years or something, and say, what's the one thing you can't miss when you're in town, or if you want to have an adventurous thing, what do you want to do? And they would say something. And it's great that the CVBs are thinking like this, because they always approached it differently, waiting for hotels to give them stuff. Like, give us content, give us inventory, and they wanted to monetize their relationship with them. And it's nice that they're thinking now in terms of promoting the destination in a way that people want to understand where they're going to, and letting the hotels join on board with that. Because, again, going back to talking to clients, they talk about what they're trying to do on their own. I'm like, well, what is your local destination organizations doing? And it seems to be either it's a frenemy relationship or an integrated relationship. And the integrated relationships always work. It's like, sometimes you need to ride the coattails of the vehicle that brings people to market, and then compete with your competition in market to segment out who then stays where. But get them to the market first. Back to that Key West Aspen thing, get them to market first, then decide at what scale or what they want to experience based on the inventory that's available in market. And this goes a long way to that. I mean, hey, I'm thinking in terms, I want to be soft adventure. I'm now looking at this destination, what I can do. And now I start equating that as to where I'm going to stay and how I'm going to schedule myself. So I think it's a brilliant move, long overdue, that the CVBs and TDCs are looking at now.
Yeah, and you really look at the experiences, these, the different destinations within it, the different stories, all that sort of stuff is great. And I always look at this as, boy, for these guys, these DMOs should be the top of the search results. They should have everything. Everybody should be going there. And the criminal thing is, they should be generating a massive amount of direct business, or pretty close to direct, because they don't necessarily have an interest in charging a 15% commission to go get the business. They want people in the destination. They get tax revenues. That's how they're generally funded, or whatever it may be. Maybe not hotel associations, but certainly the CVBs. And you go, my God, you can be doing amazing things, and boy, 9 times out of 10, just the ball is dropped, right? And
to that end, I have to give credit to Mark Thompson, who's the vice president over at Fort Worth, Dallas, as the CVB. He's had this vision a long time, and how he approaches the Dallas market is exactly that. His purpose is to feed the funnel. It's not. He stopped long ago chasing hotels down with, give me your occupancy data. We want to put a booking engine on our platform to monetize our relation. He stopped all of that. I think one of the fundamental imprints he did to that organization was, we want people to come here, period. We're going to do everything we can to get them into the market. Y'all sort it out. We're going to feature all of you. And he tries to be fair about it, and I know that. But by the same token, those who participate win. He can't drag every horse to the well. And the horses that want to come. And the ones that don't. And he features what he can do with what he has, with who he's talking to. And that has, in my mind, made them one of the more premier. Not that Dallas needed, it's a great destination anyway, but he has really made it where people, that's a benchmark people fight against. I got to beat it from Dallas. I got to take it from Dallas, or I got to fight against Dallas. Nashville's doing a good job with it as well. Come to Nashville. We have all the pieces of the puzzle in place, and then let the Nashville market sort out who stays where for what reason. They don't play favorites. They get them to the market.
No.
And I think that is a great way, to your point, that they should be on top of the funnel. They should be the premier source for their destination. And this kind of thought process goes a long way for it, I think.
So to tie in my class one more time, by the way, the name is influencer sales. That's an important distinction. We're training.
That's true.
We're training salespeople. That's okay. How to be I'm happy that you mentioned it, but how to be influencers. And a big part of that, obviously, is sharing content in this class. One of the best classes I ever did of this was with Tempe Tourism, because they had the Tempe Tourism salespeople along with their hotel partners. And that, to me, was the most brilliant class, because Tempe generates the content about Tempe, and the hotel salespeople share it. And so, there's really such a synergy between the two, and they're not stepping on each other. They're helping each other win the hotels that participate. It's a no-brainer, but doesn't happen a lot.
No, you would think common sense would rule the day, but I can honestly say that I'm dealing with properties that are in a market that look at their CVB, TDCs, chambers, whatever, as a hostile relationship. Yeah. It's like they're trying to steal business. They're going to take whatever they can use of me and give it to my competitor. It's like, dudes, y'all got to understand, they're up here, you're here. They got to go through here first. So make this work so that you can get to here. And the relationships that work compatibly like that. I mean, to your point, what the training is, it's like if they're in the same room and realize that they're in the same lane, not to overstep each other, looking collaboration, the amplification of that, the ability to augment each other is solid. I mean, some of the conversations we have with independent hotels is, okay, so you don't have a restaurant, blah, 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 but you have the ability to go out to your market and create relationships that you can bring in. And now the independent hotel can kick the butt out of a brand that has all the bells and whistles because you're bringing an experience-driven thing to your independent hotel and creating connectivity to your local market the brand can't even touch. The brand isn't going to go out and go to the nearest Ball of Twine restaurant and make a relationship with them because they want to monetize their own internal restaurant, which is not near as good nor near as local as the one that's around the corner. But the independent hotel can totally make that relationship.
Yeah. Now, do you want me to go through the seamy underbelly and ugly part of this, though?
Sure, okay. Robert, go ahead.
I'm in.
Okay. And again, this pains me no end. Okay, this is awful. So, what are they talking about? Okay, the Skift article is talking about how they're redesigning these websites. They're getting personal. They're really raising the bar, right? So, let's take a look at something really, really simple, like, I don't know, Google Page Speed Insights, perhaps, right? Something that goes, well, how does Google feel these sites are performing? Which generally kind of weighs on how you're going to, raise up in search results, what the user experience is going to be. And I'll call them out because they were mentioned in the article, right? So Miami and Beaches, CVB, on mobile, page speed slow, 4.7 seconds to load, right? Optimization good, 89%. And Google Page Speed Insights isn't the be all and end all. I mean, there are all sorts, GT metrics I always use is great, right? There are a variety of other ones. On desktop, page speed slow, optimization low, 36 out of 100. You normally don't see optimization scores quite that low, right? That's bad. Discover Puerto Rico. Mobile page speed unavailable. I have not really seen that. They say that does not have sufficient real world speed data for this page. It's like, oh my God, I don't know what's making that. Now optimization though, 96%. So if you're looking at the Miami Beach guys, go, well, optimization, we've got stuff the way we're doing it. We're a destination that's hard to optimize. No. Yeah. Puerto Rico's got that down at 96%. Now, I don't know what's happening on the speed basis on mobile. Same thing, desktop, page speed unavailable, but their desktop optimization is low at 42%. You go, wait, what are you? And I don't know. I don't know exactly what they're doing with Google to have the great mobile or not. But
I will say this is that great ideas sometimes get buried in old structures.
Yeah.
And maybe one of the fundamental things that all new sites have to be is no more than 2 folders deep, just period.
Right.
Everything has to have a lateral spread to content. They follow the retail model. Actually, that's what we're doing with all of our devs is that, and it's a crazy mix for geekheads out that is that every content piece has a recurring item into every other recurring item at the same folder level. So what you have is 10 locations of connected content associated with the singular content so that it's not a depth of search, it's a lateral search spread. And it makes a absolutely critical fundamental shift in the discoverability and speed indexing and value proposition of what gets because what Google does is from the authoritative point of view, it doesn't create, when you start doing folder depth, it says, is this more important than this, more important than this? And it picks one singularity of content. When you lateral it out, every point is a singular point of content, and it gets indexed that way. And then in reference to each other, it augments the value of each index point of all the other pages. So it creates multiple indexes for singular websites for multiple pieces of content. Retail does it every day. That's what retail does. When you go to a retail site, you click and there's an index piece for every inventory piece. at the same level that you're discovering it, and that
Right.
absolutely kicks the bejeebers out of indexing.
Right. Yeah. Well,
Sorry,
and you can go deep. You can go deep, but if you're a destination, maybe. I mean, if you're Mexico, I think you need to go. You need to go deep, right? Because you've got a lot of stuff in different regions.
It depends on what you want to be indexed for.
Right,
But
right.
in
Yeah,
this,
if you're a
when you're
hotel-
pointing
if
out
you're
with
a
these
hotel,
contents.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
you need need really, really good breadcrumbing. You need really good navigation. You need lots of sub navigation menus that
And I'm not a big fan of those.
all
All
that
of
sort
that
of
stuff is like.
Oh no,
I'm not a big fan of it.
Yeah, but but you can make it work. But the experience winds up being where it appears. I mean, the site structure could be deep, but the user experience is very, very thin, right? You don't have to drill down at all because people don't have the time or inclination. But just to go through a couple more of these, because I think it's very interesting. You then go look at Visit Bend, mobile, fast, 0.9 of a second to load. Optimization medium, 68 out of 100. Okay, that's okay. Desktop fast, optimization medium, and all of a sudden you start looking at these patterns, going, oh, Visit Philly on mobile, average page speed, medium optimization, right? Page speed low optimization on desktop. Washington.org. This is really the nation's capital. There are a couple sites to see and some reasons to maybe go there, but what do? Page speed slow, optimization low on both mobile and desktop. And you look at it and go, guys, get the foundational stuff fixed, because you may not pop up enough to start doing these really cool personalization things. You don't. It's kind of like you were saying, don't spend more money on advertising. Don't throw good money after bad infrastructure, sort of thing. Make sure you're structured properly. Then you can do cool things. But right now, a lot of these guys are turning off Google at basically recommending their pages because the site doesn't work as well as it should. So.
I know Holly has a bit of a scrunchy face, but Holly, if you go to Nike's website, it kind of, if you look at the URL strings as you go through it, you'll see what I mean, that no product is deeper than the other product. Every product is at that level.
Oh no, I totally get that. Sorry, I'm trying to upload a file, the picture of Robert, and I was having trouble. So sorry. I'm astounded at these ridiculous slow load sites of these sites.
Oh no!
Come on.
It's heinous, and the major hotel group's the same. I don't know. I really should write more blog posts on things that drive me crazy like this, but and call out the players, right? Because you really need to say,
it goes back to like the client conversations I have, is that when they're talking about the value proposition, what they're doing for where I pointed out, hey, follow the experience that your guest has to do to discover what it is you want them to see, and they're like, oh yeah, well, it's right on the bottom of the page. Why is it on the bottom of the page? Why is it not on its own content source connected to the paid campaign you created for it? And then said, let's do this. I want you to book a hotel or look at a hotel in a market you've never been, and tell me if you're discovering what you need to find there. And I think of certain places, like there's a place in Seattle I point them to that makes them go look, and they see how cumbersome it is if you don't innately know it's there. They know it's there because they built it there, or they put it there, or that's where they've known it. They've seen it before. They're familiar with it. But for the first-time user or the discovery user, they don't know it's on the bottom of the page or that it's not highlighted. And they forget that familiarity is what breeds sometimes complacency of, well, it's fine. It's there. I know it's there. It's an issue. And it's like, no, it's not, from those who don't know it's there. So, it's just
and certainly, I mean, we're talking about looking at competitors and some things like that. Who's your competition? What are they focusing on? Look at your competitors' site maps, right? I mean, and go see, hey, here's what they're focusing on. Here's what we're good at. I think in the conversation before, one of the points I was going to raise is you don't just say who's your competitor, but against what sorts of personas, what are your pluses and minuses and things like that. How do you really nail that down? But you look at the site maps, all of a sudden you go, oh, well, that is completely the structure of their website. I get it. And
it even goes back into the persona conversation. Holly, this goes back to your influencer sales training. It's like when I was talking to some clients about persona builds, and they said, well, when I was interviewing some of the properties, I said, well, we have families. Well, what kind of families? With kids. I'm like, I understand that. I mean, family. Okay. What how many kids? Well, about usually 2. Okay. Genders. Okay. And they're wondering why I'm prying this guy. It's like, what are the usual ages? And they say, well, I don't, it's like, please understand why I'm asking. You travel differently with a child that's 3 to 5 versus 5 to 7, 7 to 9, 9 to 11, and after 13, they don't even want to travel with you. So, each age of the child has a different impact as to what you're looking to experience when you're traveling. And that segmentation, which is available on Facebook, is a filter. Kids 7 to 10, blah, blah, blah. Those segmentations are there for a purpose because the experience-driven aspect of what they're discovering is based on what they're of interest. A 7 to 10-year-old traveling is not a 13-year-old traveling. And what they want to do influences the parental decision as to where they stay, what they seek out to stay near, all that stuff. So if you can segment the personas in a way that identifies your primary, you're not making a flavor of your best guest, you're making a flavor of your best opportunity guest, of what you can duplicate by expanding the interest of that kind of persona. That's the real driver to building better business with a persona. Because if you build marketing around a persona, then you know who you're targeting. You're basically, as you load the gun to go hunt, you know what you're shooting for. Compared to, I just hope I find something to shoot at. And that's a big fundamental difference on it. So, yeah. Yeah, I love talking about you. Honestly, I had so much fun with you in New Orleans, man. It was like really great to see the light bulbs pop in people's heads when you're talking about this stuff. I
wasn't invited, and I'm not hurt.
Rob,
I couldn't afford you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm cheap talent. It was like a Mercy audition. Yeah, Lauren, come on, we'll let you play with us.
Holly needed some male eye candy. What could she say? That's Lauren is the go-to guy.
I don't even think I filled that role. I think I was more like, warm body. Yeah, we got it.
No, certainly not. Absolutely not.
We had a great dinner that night.
That's for sure. It was a training class, Robert. And Lauren was one of my trainers.
Oh.
That went off the reservation.
I thought it was maybe an example of, I have trained him. Look, it is possible.
No, I was the before. I was the before.
Before?
There was afters and there was before. I was the before example. This is you. This is bad. This is the after. This is good.
Don't be like Lauren.
Don't be like Lauren. But no, even I couldn't mess up a good training program. It was fun, and I have to go back to the fact that sales has been ignored for a long time in the sense of investment, and it's been overlooked. Like, oh, marketing can solve everything. We just drive more business. We'll just funnel more people towards us. Revenue management, they're the golden child. They're the ones that are telling us the direction. And they're pulling all the great levers. The ownership wants to talk to them all the time. They never want to talk to sales, and so sales has been kind of like the redheaded stepchild for a while. In the sense of investment time, it's like, hey, you got an office space. We don't make you lift heavy things. Go do your little group thing, and we'll do the heavy lifting over here. We'll do the transfer.
You have amazing organizational knowledge and market knowledge, in those guys.
Tap
into it.
Yeah, and then when you really bring them to the table, and then you start giving them resources and investment to bring them to speed. Like I said, I enjoyed the light bulbs that were popping off in people's heads. And I said this to Holly when we were over dinner that night. It's like there are some people that were in the room that I would consider to be legacy salespeople. They've been in this a while. They know they can tell you the stories from when they had to put keys in boxes and stuff. And I thought they would be the least receptive. Mm-hmm. And they were the most hungry. They lit up and were the most engaged. And they had the most input, and they were the most excited about the stuff that was being discussed, compared to who I thought would be like, oh, this is great stuff. I'm glad I'm doing it. They participated too, but the legacy people that I thought would sit back like this, all in. They were like, thank you. This was stuff I needed to understand. And nobody ever told me what LinkedIn did. That's stuff like that because nobody's been investing in them for a long time. So I can only imagine Holly's going to be traveling a lot because I think as this start opening up and people start talking about what she's doing, I think it's going to be like, oh yeah, we need that, and they should because at the very base level, this brings their sales teams back up to speed.
Everyone needs more Holly.
Everybody needs more Holly. That's what it is. And I don't understand. Okay, so she went through 6 months of boot camp coding.
That's right.
Okay, so she can make a toaster from nothing. Okay, basically, and yet her calling should be this training program and stuff because
it really is a conflict. I'll tell you. Although I will say, I'm spending half of my time. I literally map out my time, and I'm spending half of my time developing and selling this class, and the other half of my time working on some apps. And so I'm and the apps are complementary to the class. So it's a good marriage.
Maybe that is one of the topics, and that's actually why I put it in the list, was why marketers should have roots in
technology. That was fantastic.
Yes. Which is a friend of mine, Sarah. Or you guys all know Sarah Kennedy Ellis, who used to be.
By name.
She actually.
Sabre.
Well, yeah, she was at Sabre. She was the CMO of their hospitality group. But before that, and this goes into it a little bit, she used to run Sabre Labs, right? Very, very bright. When I first met her, was very young, relatively recently out of school, had recently joined Sabre, but whip smart. And really, was always just kind of joking, kind of the geek type thing. She loved being a geek, right? Gamer, that sort of thing. And this e-consultancy article is great because she's saying basically, and now she's CMO of Marketo, right? Which is a freaking major marketing automation platform, right?
Yeah.
You don't get much more bigger and more important than that, right? In the marketing tool, in the marketing tools and she's a CMO for it, which is, talk about a great opportunity to go talk to leading brands about what they're doing and the data they need and how they can develop these things. But she basically said it's really, really important, and she knows how to code, sort of thing. And she made some great points. You can learn Python now on your phone, right? There are all sorts of different little things to go through, and very, very clever setups. There's one that I have that I was going to do, and I've downloaded it and I haven't started it yet. And I'm sure I'm in whatever sector of a Grasshopper, right? Same thing. It's a coding thing, goes through, and it gives you these very clever little tidbits when you have a chance, when you're commuting. You can go through stuff at your own speed and learn really cool stuff. But she basically says that's so important, just as a way to structure the way you think, the way you plan things, how things need to work, and understanding how to communicate to developers what you kind of want saws off so many different kind of recursive cycles of going back and forth. No, you don't get it. I was looking more for this and like that. If you can speak their language and know what the challenges they have to go through to build stuff, hugely, hugely important. And I think that's where everything is going to be going from a marketing perspective, is to be able to speak in that. It's like learning a second language, right? How do you speak in that language?
Or third or fourth. That article was fantastic. And I also really liked the article about the Marriott loyalty. And it was a case of two strong, bright women leaders, which I also appreciated in this world of
I have two daughters, and I'm very proud that a lot of great, and not that I was responsible for their development or anything. I've had the pleasure of having some tremendous, women leaders, work for me in the past, and despite them working in my teams, right? They still succeed. But no, when you people like Tammy Peter, relatively early, I mean, she would spend time with Galileo. You knew she was great and just needed an opportunity, sort of thing. Linda Kent, folks like that are just, they're fantastic. And it doesn't matter, any gender has nothing to do. These are really whip smart, good people who do great, who do great stuff. But yeah, the Marriott thing, with Karin Tampone, who's their CMO, interviewed by Brian Solis, who works for Altimeter Group, which is Charlene Lee's kind of usability, I don't know what you call it, analytics and consulting group. But I would recommend, there's an 11-minute video in there, which really kind of digs into what what Marriott's doing, and Karin's background is pretty interesting. You look at where she's been with Disney and some of the other organizations. She brings a lot to that to that organization, which is great. And she calls out how she works with the product development guys, the operations guys, how marketing integrates with all of that is absolutely essential.
Definitely a theme of convergence continues.
Oh yeah, well, and it has to be. It's all, even back the days when they had the 4 Ps. It was price and product and promotion, and what was the other one? Place. Yeah, which is kind of distribution, right? Yeah, all those things. Product is kind of the development of it, and the if you're a service business, it's pretty much the operations guys. And place is just is distribute. Pricing is revenue management, and and promotion is marketing, and those things. But again, they always called it, those were the 4 Ps of marketing, right? Which now you're looking at chief revenue officer. Yes, that's what you're doing. You are the top line generator, and how do you go do that? So yeah, how this stuff fell apart and wound up diverging is still a bad. I still don't know exactly how that happened.
I think there had to be some specialization because there was such development at a rapid pace in one of those areas.
I guess so. Yeah. So they got a bunch of specialists, and then those specialists developed silos.
Have to come back together.
And the budget, actually, that's a good point. And the budgets wound up getting allocated by those silos, becoming competitive between the groups and that sort of thing. And it wasn't as much of, here's the objective, let's push this down and make hard decisions. Let's keep Harvey in whatever operations happy, or Sally and Sally and marketing. No, I'm just saying, whoever. Well, no, a lot of it comes down to the individuals, right?
Right.
It's just like Harvey's, we can't lose him, so let's go give him that. And sorry, Jeff over in revenue management, you're not going to get your resource.
So you put one article in about voice command stuff that I thought was very interesting, because I'm actually working on something.
That was the Rut-Row, the last. Before the Rut-Row, I think there was enough Google stuff in here. Google is doing a whole bunch of stuff. So, so number one, and I put them in a few things. One is they're changing around, and it is like FocusWire had a little article, kind of a subtle change. Well, what's happening is the Google hotel ads is now popping up above, and in many cases replacing AdWords. Now that they're on the same platform, they can do some very interesting sorts of things. So from Google's perspective, it is AdWords sort of thing. It's just the formatting is like Google hotel ads, which again is very, very clever, because all of a sudden at the top of your search results, you've got 3 or 4 3 hotels, and the ability to go, let's search
to add that into just really quickly, Holly, before you jumped in at the beginning of the show, I was talking about a platform I was using that brought in for data sets into Google Analytics, Facebook, Bing, and so forth. So you could actually see attribution stringing, not from a referral point of view, but from an actual cost and engagement attribution string point of view, which is really cool. It's on AppSumo, Omics, or I forget what the acronym for it is. So it pulls it in as a data set. Now, with that, it opened back up me playing with BigQuery with Google. And I had played with it, but I didn't really mess with it. But this platform has what it calls AI integration for modeling in this platform. And so I was playing with it with BigQuery. It is, I'm just like giddy excited with it, because it creates correlation values from an AI perspective that you wouldn't ask. It's like, instead of you making pivot tables and Tableau sheets of correlations and so forth, it will go look for correlations that you may not have discovered. It figures them out. And it's like, it's looking at, one of the things that popped up that was bizarro was then when I plugged in Facebook as a data set to my Google Analytics for one of my clients, it was pulling out social engagement by geography on content for an ad that I was running to the content on the site and showed the conversion increase to that particular program, I never asked for it. It just showed this page is producing better because of this string of things that happened to this piece, and you're getting a higher conversion on this page. I'm like, wow, I never even know to look for that. It's just neat.
Right.
It's
and you wouldn't because it's the behaviors of all these individuals that
there's so many little strings of but Google BigQuery, I mean, that's just crazy stuff. And this platform, which I just stumbled across in AppSumo because I buy everything AppSumo pops up.
You guys, are you on AppSumo, Robert?
No, I'm not. But yeah,
probably, you probably have money in your pocket because I spend. It comes up, I'm like, oh yeah, I got to buy that. You know.
Yeah, I know.
I'm looking at it. It looks good.
Yeah, it's neat.
Wow.
And it's like I love playing with these when they come up, and when that came up, I'm like, oh my god, that's like scary, spooky. But go ahead with the Google stuff because remember, I think it was last week's show, or the show beforehand. I was talking about the fact that a client brought to my attention something that happened on mobile with Google. I didn't understand, which was the local index, the local value of your hotel, the location score index, based on how close it was to other things. And I got a client that asked me, and they generously gave me the link to the article why they're asking. Is like, so what's our local index? I'm like, I'll go look.
Yeah,
and it's a very specific way to find it, where you have to go first, look at just your destination on mobile. You can't do it anywhere other than mobile. Just the destination in general. It shows all the places you can stay, and you literally go look at the hotels. And when you click on that link, it brings to the description of that hotel, and you have to scroll down to the bottom, and there's a location index up to 5 that you rank for. And what I've discovered with it was Google was referring to things that I didn't even know I was close to, but it knew I was close to. You know, things that I didn't understand. You know, we're just pointing out the fact that it was close to such and such deli or such and such this. I'm like, wow, I never even added that into my content strategy for localization. I actually pulled out stuff to add into content to the website that I didn't know I was close to because I never looked at it for look for those things. So yes, to your point, Google is popping stuff up, and I'll let you continue on with like the flight, the hotel monitor for Thanksgiving on prices.
But, yeah, well, and that's kind of what another. Okay, so one of the tools that they popped up was basically talking about. Well, first, it's moving this up to the top of the list. Number 2, the holiday season flights, which was kind of the topic of the article. The part that applies to hotels is the hotel price insights, and they have some little examples here where all of a sudden you can start. They're using some much better data, which all of a sudden can look at the curves of where your pricing is going at certain days in advance, that sort of thing. And it looks like you can put in comparison hotels, right? So you can compare yourself to another, and their illustration is that you're $38 less than Hotel Catalonia, over these particular dates. So you can actually compare which ones you want to stay at, and are you getting a good deal in Hotel A versus Hotel B? So in this case, they were Hotel Catalonia versus the Hilton Barcelona, and it was, what was it? Oh no, they had two comparison hotels. Sorry, Mercer costs less on average than other 4-star hotels nearby for December 17th and 18th. I mean, this is game-changing transparency based on a lot of the stuff that they learned with their flight stuff. They're now getting serious about.
Imagine the personalization. What I was just talking about, the localization index. And they personalize that with you as a Google client for what they know for you. Now they can start making recommendations potentially with what they can do. And my BigQuery conversation about how they correlate data, that because they know what the intent of your travel might be, they could actually recommend hotels closer to things that you would be more inclined to be interested in at prices that you will be more inclined to pay for before they even begin the search query onto what you'd be looking to do. I mean, they could actually probably tailor that content even more finite, particular to you.
Well, and I mean, and the OTAs have been doing this for years. If you wander onto, and even like a Groupon, it doesn't matter. Airbnb is expert at this. You come on the site, you've never been to that site before. right? They have zero data on you. They're using their big data and their analytics to predict, oh, well, here's Lauren. He lives in Florida. Today's, Friday. We got a hunch for whatever reason. Here's what he's going to wind up looking at. And they're going to give you a destination, the destinations they pick out. They're going to do New York and Myrtle Beach or, Los Angeles, who knows, right? Aspen, whatever that may be, based on behaviors of
he wants to go visit the
millions of people, millions of people before you. They go, well, it worked for them. Not just this is it, but more of a, well, let's try this. And the most important thing is, hey, we're running a test with this. And did Lauren do whatever, or did he have? Oh, damn it, he had to search for something.
Did he
else.
drool when the bell rang?
What did he? Well, yeah, but the network effect off of this is, he searched for something else and then he went down and he booked. Got it. New piece of data. Update the algorithm. Tweak this, and now we're going, right. So yeah, it's pretty amazing in terms of what's going on. And then the last one was what was it? Oh, that they've expanded. They've expanded search ads again. No, this is the last Google Google sort of thing. So yeah, you can get bigger line, more lines, more data, more links off of it, which is great. And then it adapts itself on mobile being different than desktop. So just another thing that folks have to look at to take advantage of the to make it more useful
for advertisers, but not necessarily for consumers. I'm surprised a little bit by that.
I don't know though, but it's your whole ad utilization where they can look at it, and I bet they ran a whole bunch of tests and figured out, what? This is what works when people had more content and they had 3 lines instead of 2 lines, and they had whatever options, 2 instead of 1 option. They clicked more, they bought, they moved down the funnel, they purchased it, because again, Google has all the data in Google Analytics, right? They've got all that stuff. And, maybe they aren't picking on your website, but they're learning from every stat as you having an individual property. They've got all the properties, right?
I would add the technology to this. I would add the technology that, Holly, that pixel location on the screen is a functionality, and with that means mouse, that where your mouse travels, and mouses follow your eye travel and all this. On mobile, it isn't as that because there is no mouse to that process. So the heat map functionality of understanding where the engagement is solely based on link activity and engagement. And I think from the consumer usability improvement is giving them, because of the screen size, more defined amount of information compared to relying upon just the engagement indicator of did I click or not click on it, might help in the fact of whether it improved the engagement by the increase in content. And I think that was probably the motivator for the mobile side of it, is by improving the content or expansion of the content, improve the engagement value associated with that content compared to did they by a heat map engagement hit it. I'm guessing. I mean, certainly Google's way smarter than I am on that, but I think that probably had some influence, because I think about that stuff too, is when we do our mobile rendition, we build every site mobile first and then see how it looks in desktop afterwards. And a lot of it is our choice on content is based on, is it creating a resolve of conversion or engagement? Not so much am I occupying more screen space. Is it helping with what the reason of them being on that particular page is for? It's part of our process of discovery on it now. So I'm thinking they probably have the same application.
But again, the ability to look at these price trends, to compare them to other properties. I mean, this is not just down at the location, destination search level. This is down at the individual property search level, which is, on that single property page. And it went live 4 days ago, right? So that is going to be a very interesting dynamic. And boy, I don't know if Google's going to be turning around the information of here are the other hotels that people have been comparing you to. But I mean, those are certainly going to be some very, very strong signals.
I wonder if Google's going to monetize that as for us as marketers by coming to us and saying, perhaps you should consider expanding your budget in relationship to the following comp set. because they're thing. They're basically saying, hey, here's a little insider information, and they're sharing it with it. So everybody starts raising their bid profiles because everybody's being told you're competing with these people, so compete more directly with them and spend more money.
And the reality is, for those comp sets, they've got better information than anyway. The classic is an old STR one. This was probably 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know if it's changed. Hopefully, it's gotten better. But STR always used to say that when they compared comp sets of a particular hotel to the other hotels in the comp set, that there was just radical differences, right? It would be like 60% difference. And you're like, wait a second, this guy's saying these properties are those properties that Hotel A feels are competitors. Hotel B and C and D, who are in the comp set, don't feel that property is a competitor. And you just go, that's insane, which again comes down to the whole persona issue and things like that, right? Because you may have different comp sets by persona.
Well, we've had that all the time with clients on their star profile. We often tell them or talk to them about, okay, so your star comp set, is it financially based, so you show well for investors? Or is it market based, where you're looking at your competitive value associated with people that are being compared to you? I mean, and it's hard to get them to understand that sometimes the star comp set is a vanity comp set. I want to be compared to that hotel because I don't want to be compared to that hotel. Yeah. And it's like, it's unrealistic. And you always have to keep paying for these extra reports because then you want to compare to who actually shows up. And I think Tim pointed it out. It's like, go online and see who shows up with you. That's the starting point of who you should be comparing yourself to in market, not what you think you can be compared to in market. So, yeah.
Oh, and actually, there's one more, and I'm actually posting all these on I've been testing this actually. I do a post where I cross post to the hotel digital marketing one, and then I'm putting the little notes down there just to kind of see how much traction they get. But anyway, on the notes on Facebook, it'll have how to succeed at Google SEO, 10 critical factors from a group called Zippy, and it's really good. ZYPPY, never heard of them at all, but really, really good little,
They're
key
new
things
chief
to look
financial,
at.
somebody we know, not financial, chief tech guy. I think we've talked about him before. I gotta go look his name up, but that's the only way I know about Zippy was because it was somebody we talked to, and they joined Zippy. He came up.
Okay, and one more thing before the rut row, which I thought was fascinating.
I'm on the rut row.
No, I know everybody wants to jump the rut row. Thank you for not doing the rut row first. We cannot do that. We need some form of discipline in this.
A carrot at the end of the stick.
Exactly. Just imagine all the viewers hanging in for the whole show just to see what the rut row, because they haven't figured out how that whole fast forward thing works on YouTube. So we're looking for technically a really deficient audience. But the top 10, I thought this was a great article from Hacker Moon. Top 10 roles in AI and data science. So we talk about need to be data driven and things like that. Well, the stakes are raised, right? We've been talking about AI and the importance. So this basically goes, hey, if you're going to get serious about this, here are the guys you need to hire in what order. And I thought the order was absolutely dead on. So and number one, I've gone down too far here. People go, oh, I need a data scientist. No, data scientist is number 6 on the list. And they're saying if you don't have resources, kind of start at the top. Number 1 is a data engineer, which ties into my kind of structure the site properly, make sure everything's tagged properly, make sure you can measure the behaviors, right? If you don't have that, everybody else is a complete waste of time because you've got bad data, right? So, and they counted it. Of course, these guys are just total geeks. So that was number 0, right?
Yeah,
Holly, that would be,
I love that.
Yeah. So you can't start with 1. That's just ridiculous. Number 2 is a decision maker. And they're saying before hiring,
so interesting.
Before hiring that PhD trained data scientist, make sure you have a decision maker who understands the art and science of data driven decision making. It's like,
that was good,
because you're going to have way too much data, And what's important, what's not, how does that data tie into the objectives of the organization and the strategies you've developed to accomplish certain goals? That would be good. So once you get the decision maker, then you get an analyst who can kind of look at it, because maybe that decision maker may not be able to look at it as sharply as someone who's really a trained analyst. Let's see what else. What was after? It was
funny. The expert analyst was next.
Oh, an expert analyst. Yeah. Well, if you have money,
then get an expert analyst. Yeah.
Yeah. You go, this person's really, really good at it, and that's great. And you know what? When you're starting out, you might not be able to get an expert analyst, right? Because they're just like, oh boy, this isn't, start smaller sort of thing. But then they go statistician, and then they finally get to a data scientist. Or wait, number 4 was statistician. What was after? Oh,
machine learner.
Applied machine learning
applied machine learning engineer. So that's someone who can set up your machine learning
and actually
to do stuff. Just same as your data engineer. Yeah.
Just remember that everybody keeps referring to AI, and there's a lot of times that what they're referring to is not AI, it's machine learning. Right. There's progressions. AI is on the top of that progression, but there's machine learning in there. Oh. And if they say, oh, it's AI, it's like, no, what you're talking about is actually machine learning. And then I feel like Dilbert out of the cartoon strip, because they're looking at like, you're being too geeky. That has no difference to me. To me, it's just
a lot of it's natural language processing on queries, right? How you parse that stuff out properly. Which gets into the whole semantic analysis thing. All sorts of little parts of this. But again, you need to do that. You can't just go, hey, we have an AI driven. I mean, that's kind of my joke now is people say, what are you working on? I've got a great startup, which is an AI driven virtual reality blockchain. Which is just completely fictional. But I mean, people are out there talking about stuff like, and they aren't doing any of that, right? Yeah. The AI is, they've got an algorithm, right? The virtual reality is, I don't know. They've got some sort of graphics where you can overlay something else, right? And the blockchain thing is Lord knows, could be anything, probably not blockchain related, right?
Hey, it's 10:30. I have to go before the rut row.
Oh no!
Come on, we're gonna do the rut row. See, you took too long, Robert. We gotta do the rut row.
I know. Okay, so the rut row was Alexa skills squatting, and this is, with every new technology, it can be used for tremendous good or incredible evil sort of thing. So what happens here is you have kind of the homonym challenge, which is, I want to look for a particular hotel name or an app name or a website name. And all of a sudden you use a slightly different one. And the example that some researchers came up with was American Express. Like, what happens if you don't have an American Express account? You haven't signed up for it yet. And you say, I won't say it here because it will trigger my Google. You say, hey Siri, or hey Alexa, or whatever, something about American Express. Well, these guys had something called Am Express, and it comes up as a little card, right, on your mobile app saying, this is what you want to use? You go, yeah. And then it comes up and goes, well, we need some personal information. We need your username and your password. And you go, sure, here it is. And it goes in, and then it doesn't really work right, because it's not American Express, and you just gave them your username and password, right? Not
either of you made a skill yet? Have you guys ever made a skill yet for
Alexa?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I've done it for Google. I've done it for Google Home, and if you use IFTTT, right? If this and that.
Yeah, IFTTT.
Yeah. It's amazing the stuff you can do. I mean, you can build.
I'm a domain geek when it comes to buying domains. I have way too many of them and had too many of them and so forth. But I'm also kind of in the skill set. Unlike other things, you can make a unique skill. And then you own that skill by name, like a domain. You own it by name. It's your skill. That's a skill. So
what I've been making. Did you build?
It's kind of a tourism skill for one of my markets. That is to discover what you want them to discover in your market. It's to discover what to do in New York. So I'm working on building up where to stay, what to do, all in proximity to my hotels, and I want to build it so that, one, I keep the territory, that I have that skill name. The other is that if it ever gets applicable where voice commands and Alexa is the one that's being used for voice command communication and so forth, I now can actually introduce that as a market set into what they would use it for, because then it would be a self-directed one. It's kind of like your own personal butler, basically, that you are giving them the ability to create their own level 1 solutions for a lot of stuff. So I've been messing with it, but I also looked at, and then when I read this article, I'm like, oh, they found out that I'm doing this. It wasn't the same thing. I'm not using it for ill intent, but I was thinking about all the skill names that I want to get so that I can keep them for what I think is an evil plan to take over the universe. So yeah.
World, I'm very sorry I brought this up and alerted Lauren of the possibility.
It's good the rest of the world has been alerted.
Yeah, but
watch out for Lauren's skill sets. Yeah,
but look at what Google's doing. Take a look into Google Trips, right? So when you book it, it'll go scan your Gmail, and it'll pull your itinerary stuff already in, right? So it knows your flight patterns. If you haven't booked a hotel, it's not that smart at it yet. I think where, it hasn't figured out, oh, here's a hotel thing. Maybe it is. We've got a hotel booking that's in there, so we won't bug them. But you can put that in. But then it will have all these experiences, all these tours, all this stuff. And again, because they have Android, it's all broken down into these little cards, right, of different things to do. And boy, they've got Google Home and the voice thing and those little cards and snippets of content and all that stuff with schema that you should be building up on your website are going to be what's produced when you start asking.
Remember, Google just changed their schema. Google just changed their schema for hospitality again. And you got to go back and refresh your schemas because they just added a whole mess of new segmentations into the hospitality schema.
Yep. So you need to be updated with that. So don't be like one of those destinations where you have crappy site.
Don't be like Lauren. Be like Holly.
Well,
I gotta go.
Oh wait.
All right, Holly.
Wait. We figured it out. Lauren is the before. Holly's the after.
After, right? Holly.
No. Yes.
They got to know about influencer sales. Where do they find out about influencer sales? As we've been jabbering about it now.
Influencer-sales.com. And you can reach me at Holly at influencer-sales.com.
Oh, really? Oh, wait. Have you separated? Has there been a falling out between Holly and Lauren on hospitality digital marketing?
You can still also reach me at Holly at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I only get her part-time now. The rest of the time is all running, gallivanting all around the world.
But I was here.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm not gonna click the red hang up and end for everybody.
No, don't do that one.
I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna close out.
Don't do that one.
Goodbye.
Don't touch that button. Bye, Ollie.
Bye.
Mr. Robert, if people want to know more about you and what you do, where can they find you, kind sir?
Certainly rockcheetah.com or at Robert K. Cole on social media.
Robert, great topics. It was a lot of fun. But
they're always great topics, and we actually talked about a couple of them.
We actually talked about them.
If we can keep Ed and Stuart off and only have Tim on for part-time, we can get to some topics in.
And for everyone that wants to play this back, I am going to change the root URLs of the shows, where before I would just bring them down to the show number, like 158, 159, 160, and so forth. I'm changing the format that they will be with the full context of show 160, August 31st, 2018 is usually the string of the post itself. So the best recommendation to do in the future going forward, playing back any of the shows, is simply go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. That will be where all the links to all the shows would be. That we have in the calendar year, and you can click on whichever one you want, which will bring you to the post that will have the show notes, the links that Robert has generously provided for topics, and anything else that we have to throw in, including a replay of the show itself. So with minutes broken down.
You're going to have that on each individual page, and then you'll have the show notes and all that content broken out. Wow.
Well, I do. I always have. Yeah. Every show has all your topics. Yeah, it has its own page, has who was the co-host, and all by the minute breakdown as to when we were talking about what topics.
Right.
But I always shortened that URL down to just the show number. And of course, it doesn't help with indexing because when Google looks at it, it's like 159 what?
Right.
Yep. So I decided to leave it as its original string, which shows the whole name of the show itself, so it gets indexed easier. In so doing, it makes it harder to reference to people when they're playing the show. Like, okay, remember to go to hospitaldigitalmarketing.com/show-159-live-August-19- whatever. So just go to hospitaldigitalmarketing.com/live. The links will be there. We'll post it, of course, up on Facebook, which also has been simulcasted anyway. So yes, and next week's show will be 161. It drives my wife crazy when we do travel plans. I have to leave from Baltimore late Friday rather than Thursday night, just because I have to be somewhere where I can start the show because you can't be in a plane to do it. So I had to add Friday into my stay in Baltimore just so I make sure that the show gets started. But Robert, if you're there, I'll probably only be able to be on the show for about a half hour and then head to the airport. So by all means, if you can, that'd be great. For everyone else, thank you so much for
I
doing the show.
will be next week. Yes, I will. I will be next week. I have to move a sofa we have a bunch of stuff in a storage unit for my daughter who's moving into a larger apartment now that she's married, right? So we're moving a bunch of stuff, getting the moving truck and moving some stuff down there. But
you're pretty much an experienced moving truck driver. I don't think there's any problem with that.
You've already come up with an excuse why you can't help me move. I was going to have you fly into Dallas and
just help me with the sofa. Yeah. Yes, I already laid that out. So thank you, everyone that joined us with the show. Next week's show, 161. Eric Dorr is going to help us find additional co-hosts. He really wants to start participating. He doesn't want to be in front of the camera. So.
Jason Fried of Duetto would like to come on the show. And we should
then he's on. I'd love to have Jason on. He's brilliant.
He should. So, send him a note. I forgot to tell you that. I promised I would. I did not give him a time frame, so I've kept my promise. I said I would recommend that to you. So
thank you.
We should get him on. I think he'll be available anytime. Yeah, good guy.
Awesome.
So doing an amazing job with Duetto's content. I mean,
he's always been a great content person. Great writer. Always has been. All right, Mr. Robert, thank you so much. For everyone else, thank you so much. Thank you for this concludes show number 160. Next week, 161. We are in our 4th year of happiness and joy for every week for doing hospitality digital marketing. And we will see everyone next week. Until then, bye, everyone.